There's a certain level of gatekeeping that doesn't allow the general consumer to know what it is that they're consuming and why. It's because we're so small, we don't have to rely on like these massive amounts of coffee that we're getting from great farmers, not so great farmers.
Everybody wants to get motivated and inspired to hear the good things, but there's also a lot of challenging things that come with just trying to make it in today's world.
I'll definitely be honest. During the first few years of like starting Motivate, there were some dark days. Like there was a lot of depression because you're trying to shift like your mindset on what does my new career path look like and all of that. And you're having kids. If you're constantly learning, you're constantly growing, it's always a new challenge that you're dealing with.
I'm excited to talk to somebody who is a business owner in a market that he's competing with some of the big boys out there. We're talking Starbucks, we're talking Phil's, we're talking Pete's, yet he's found a way to make it work and to give back to his community. And not only do that, but he's also very active in a nonprofit. I'm excited to talk to Collin Young. Thank you, Collin, for coming on the show today.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Is it 2 L's or is it 1 L? Because I saw 2 L's. Did I misspell your name?
Yeah, it's definitely 2 L's.
Wow.
You're good. You got
awesome,
it right.
Man. So coffee shop. Why a coffee shop?
So it wasn't originally a coffee shop. So I guess I could start there.
Yeah,
I'll start there. Originally, it was a coffee roasting company. It was my wife always says, it's because you drank too much coffee and we couldn't afford it anymore. I mean, that's partially true. So we were working in San Leandro as kids pastors at a church, and we were not making ends meet. It was tough. We were making pennies. And so we were trying to figure out like, what is one way we could start building a business? And because I am passionate about coffee, it was like, well, let's start roasting coffee and let's go from there and see what kind of happens. Like, let's see if we can actually make money off of this.
So how do you get the coffee beans? I mean, you have to go to Colombia, you have to go to South America, you got to make connections and have it shipped over here.
Right. And I had no idea at first either.
Oh,
like,
so
I was green completely. Yeah.
So how do you do that? Is that exactly what you had to do? You had to go find a supplier?
Right. No. So, I mean, so the cool thing is we live in the Bay, and so Port of Oakland brings in all the coffee. And so anything that comes into like West Coast, it comes in here first. And so we kind of get first dibs to it, or we have access to all of it. We don't have to go get it shipped, and it's all right here. And so all you have to do is find an importer that you like, and you can start there. So what I did is I went and I worked with a home roasting company that's in Oakland called Sweet Maria's. And they had like all these small, like 1 pound bags that you can get. And then you stick that into it's literally like old school popcorn popper. It comes out the top. And you stick like a 1/4 cup in there, and it will roast it for you. So it's green coffee. It's the seed from the coffee. You roast it until it's as brown or as black as you want. And then that's it. You go from there.
Wow. So you had no idea what you're getting into. You just
you
thought about drinking coffee, like maybe I can make a living just roasting the thing. And you get into it like, oh, this is not as easy as I thought it was. And you were how old at this time?
Yeah, I was 25.
25 years old.
Yeah, 27.
So how did you buck the trend of not just doing what everybody says you're supposed to do and get a degree and go work for corporate America, making a good salary, it's stable, you can support a family with that? Like, what caused you to say, no, I want to go do my own thing?
I think a lot of it had to do with how I was raised. So my parents were small business owners ever since I can remember. So they had landscape company. My dad had a landscape company for as long as I can remember. My mom, she did childcare just to kind of make ends meet. And then as we got older, we actually moved up north I was up there for 3 years, and they opened a elder care facility. So they were kind of like always slightly entrepreneurial, more so like small business minded, and trying to figure out ways that they could support our family without like working for somebody.
So that gave you the motivation to say, hey, I don't want to do the simple 9 to 5, maybe it's stable money, but I'm not really doing anything like I'm passionate about. Was that sort of your mindset? Nothing that came across your mind, I want to do finances, I want to do nothing like that?
No, that was never, I mean, my big one that I thought was going to work was like, I'm going to go to school, I'm going to get my degree in biblical studies, and I'm going to become a youth pastor. Like that's going to be my bread and butter. So that was the original journey.
Gotcha.
And then I got there and I was like, okay, number one, this doesn't pay anything in the Bay Area in a small church. You got to do something else.
Yeah.
And then 2, like, is this actually what I really want to do for the rest of my life? So that's where that kind of like, we're starting to like redefine what we really wanted to do, my wife and I.
Okay. And then it just transitioned to the coffee roasting thing.
Yeah.
So walk me through that first step. Okay. You make the connections. Now you have coffee beans. Where do you buy the roasters? Where do you find the facility to go do it at? Like, how do you go through that?
Yeah. So again, like this was all just like absolute like learning everything from scratch, which I think made it like really, really fun at the time. And 'cause it's like if you're constantly learning, you're constantly growing, it's always a new challenge that you're dealing with. But it's a fun challenge. You know, it's not something you can't figure out. It's like, no, I can actually figure this out, or I can find it on YouTube and talk to somebody who knows.
Yeah.
So, and there's a lot of resources. So what I did was I started taking my coffee, one, to share it with friends and family. And then two, I would take it to, there's a co-op in Berkeley. That's where we roast now. And there's a cupping table. So it's just a regular like 8-foot table, and everybody brings their coffee there, and they would set it up, and everybody would go around and taste it like one by one. Like you get to taste each coffee side by side and get evaluated.
So is it really better than Starbucks?
Absolutely. No question.
How do you, I mean, I'm not a coffee person. So when I go, if I ever get a latte or whatnot, I don't know where the coffee beans come from. I'm like, does it taste good? Okay, great. So what separates maybe some of these big corporations that have access to the best, apparently, sources from around the world from your local roaster? And what do people just maybe not understand about why they should support the smaller guys who are making coffee?
Right. So with the smaller guys, one of our biggest strengths, I think, is because we're so small, we don't have to rely on like these massive amounts of coffee that we're getting from great farmers, not so great farmers, like blending everything together and then just creating like this mass product. Instead, you're able to like pinpoint, no, I actually like working with this farmer here, and I'm going to work with him every single year, and I'm going to support and see how we can make their coffee better year after year after year. So that's something that like the small guys like us are able to be involved in, that the bigger ones, like there's just no way to do that. Like, how do you replicate that on a broad scale? I don't know.
Man, I've seen this with coffee, and I've seen it with tequila, of all things. Everybody has a tequila brand now. The Rock, George Clooney, I think Justin Timberlake. People have all their own tequilas, and I still am more of a tequila connoisseur, if you want to call it that. So I know the ones that I like and where they're sourced from, and I know the celebrities are putting their names on tequila. It's not bad, but there's a lot of stuff in it that makes it more palatable for a wider market that's not appreciative of where the actual juice comes from. But when you go to the old school places that make it the old fashioned way, the Tejana and whatnot, you can taste the difference.
See, I should have asked for tequila today.
See, I should have brought some down here. See, it used to be a thing with this. That was the whole theme of the show, is that we would sit here and enjoy a cocktail. But as time went on, most of my guests are here in the middle of the day, and I don't want to come in the middle of the day and then drink, and then I got to drive home. And I sort of lost that, but I need to bring that part back, because that's the whole theme of Real Talks on the Rocks and shaking, and all the ice in this thing just melted. But going back to it, it's almost just they're charging a lot for tequila that, to me, is just not as good as the old fashioned thing that you could buy on the shelf for $25 or $30. It actually tastes really, really good. And do you see the same thing in the coffee market? I see a lot of people putting names on bags of coffee, influencers. And when you inundate the market like that, like, how does the average person even know, is yours the best? Is it the same as this person with a different label? What makes yours special? How do you help people get through all that?
Right. No, that's a great question. I should get a hold of some of those influencers. No, that's a good question. I think we do our best to help educate our customers as best we can. I don't like leaving our customers in the dark, and I feel like a lot of coffee companies have made it to where there's a certain level of gatekeeping that doesn't allow the general consumer to know what it is that they're consuming and why. And so like I still run into people all the time who are avid coffee drinkers who don't actually know the difference between a light roast and a dark roast. And so it's like, and it's like, if we can at least explain to you the process of what's happening and why and what you're looking for, or why you might like this single origin better than you would like a blend, and why, right? And what does that even mean? And these are just like basic things that we try to teach. I don't know. I feel like that can help, because people like finding stuff that they actually enjoy, not just because it's got somebody's name on it.
So when people come to your coffee establishment for the first time, it's called Motivat Coffee in Oakland. If anybody's in Oakland, look up Motivat Coffee by Lake Merritt. How do you explain what they're drinking? I mean, I think that is one thing that separates Like the people who really are passionate about it, as opposed to your Starbucks that says, what are you going to have? Coffee. Okay, $5. Here you go. Boom, done. Thank you. Bye. When you can sell the product, especially to somebody that doesn't know no coffee, and explain what they're drinking, it takes it up a whole another level, because now I know as a consumer that you know your product and you can explain it, and it makes me want to come back more. So when your employees are explaining the roast, how are they doing that to people when they can put the roast to somebody who just doesn't understand the coffee jargon?
Yeah, no, they do a good job of it. And most of our employees they don't come from coffee backgrounds. So anything that they've learned has kind of been in-house. And so when they explain it, it's really from their own perspective of like, here's how, like what this coffee tastes like to me. Here's what it reminds me of. And so it's more of a process. Like even if you look at our bags, you'll see the tasting notes on it is similar to wine, where it'll have like, oh, this tastes like toasted marshmallows and papaya, right? Or something bizarre like that. And I remember at first it threw me off when I would see that, because it doesn't make any sense. But coffee all has its own special flavors. And so when they're able to describe that from a personal perspective, I think it helps our customers to value it more, and then just get excited about it, because like the flavors are there, but you have to know what you're looking for.
And is that consistent? Like, can you always get that same profile from the same producer who makes the same beans, roasting it the same way, or does it change seasonally? The same beans, but we're going to try something new with the roasting process.
So year to year, yeah, we've had that issue. So we'll get something that that came in from maybe 2018, and we fell in love with it, and then now 4 years later, 5 years later, it's changed. And so I think within a particular harvest, you're pretty good, because it's all the same weather, it's all the same farm, it's all the same people. But then if you go year to year, I'd notice some changes, whether good or bad.
So how deep do you go into, when you source your producers, into how things are made? This is a big thing nowadays. Everybody wants to know, where does my coffee come from? Is it from an organic farm? Are they giving back to the community? Is it no child labor, whatever? Some people get really deep and they want to know everything. How far do you guys go when it comes to sourcing your beans? Is that even possible once it shows up at the port?
Right. Yeah. I mean, you only know what they tell you, right? So, I mean, they could be just completely BSing and you have no idea.
True.
And so I've heard that from, folks who source their own coffee. They're like, dude, you have no idea what you're actually getting. But I like to believe that the companies that are transparent are doing it for the purpose of transparency, not just to make people happy. So we work with, like I said, Sweet Maria's, and then their wholesale side is called Coffee Shrub. And so as far as how deep we go into it, like they will share, is it organic? Are we doing farm gate pricing, which is the farmer gets to decide and agree upon what the price is. It's not, if you get locked into like, say, a fair trade price, a lot of times it's not fair because it's way lower than it should be. This is not something the farmer agreed upon. This is like, they just jammed it down as low as possible. And
Gotcha.
Everybody was like, okay, like if that's the best we can do, that's the best we can do. But what about the farmer who like knows he's sitting on gold? And then, you know what I'm saying? Like he doesn't get a chance to negotiate.
Gotcha.
So we look for the ones that, like that's something we look for. It's called farm gate. It's agreed upon at the farm.
Got it. So when you go actually purchase the beans from the supplier at the Port of Oakland, you're not the only one there, right? There's several people, probably small businesses, small coffee shop owners who are doing the same exact thing. Or is it people who are buying to roast who then sell it to other individual coffee shops? Because you're doing your own roasting still, correct?
Right. We're still roasting.
So how does it normally work with most people? Do they do their own roasting, or some middleman buys it, roasts it, and now he's selling it to all the other shops in the city?
Right. It's both. It's totally both. Yes. I mean, we just find all of our stuff is online. So you find the ones you're looking for. You may get samples of it, test it out.
Gotcha.
Right.
Okay.
And then, but the white labeling, I think, is what you're talking about, where you've got like,
Is it? I don't know what that is.
yeah, right. So it's like, so it's a roaster who roasts for a ton of different companies. And then he's just like, he puts the branding on and he's like, okay, here's your coffee. Here's your coffee. And then, but it's all done by the same guy.
So where does that go? Is that like at your local Whole Foods when you see these like local roasters? Is that where that's coming from? Or is this stuff that's actually sold in individual coffee shops around the Bay Area?
Yeah, I would say it's both. Yeah. So it's just how different companies choose to kind of formulate themselves. Some of them don't know how to roast, but they know they want to have their own roast and they want to have their own brand. And so,
I mean, it does sound more special to know that I'm going to a shop that actually like it's in the same facility, right?
no. So like I said, it's in Berkeley.
Berkeley,
So,
okay.
right. So the shop's in Oakland. So it's not, but I think we do our best to like tell our customers as often as we can, like, no, we actually roast it, because you just don't think about it in your head. until somebody repeats it like multiple times, especially if you don't see a roaster there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that makes total sense. But like if you had in the same facility and they saw, oh, there goes the beans, there goes the roaster, there goes the end product, and now it's going into the shelf.
So that's our end goal. Like we can't wait to have
that would
physical
be something.
space with the roaster inside.
Have you been to that? I think it's Starbucks Reserve Roastery. There's like 4 in the country. Have you been to one of them?
No, I haven't.
I went to one in New York, and you walk in, it's like this is a coffee shop. It looks like a big warehouse. You walk in, and there's the big machines where they're roasting it. There's a whole display where you can choose the freshly roasted batch. Then they got a bar over there where they mix coffee into alcohol drinks. And you got an area over here for your, like, it was a whole big production. And it really helps to sell the idea this is fresh coffee. I see the coffee being roasted from here into my cup. Like, wow, it adds to that whole experience. So I think if you somehow, guys, if you found a way to do that, man, there's nobody in the Bay Area who's doing that, I'm guessing.
There are. I mean, I don't want to shout out other coffee companies, but there are some really good
people around.
There are. So yeah, I mean, Red Bay is one of them. So Red Bay, amazing coffee. They do a great job of like working within the community. And that's one thing I love about coffee too, is like very collaborative. While there is competition, we do our best to like be a community.
Gotcha.
So Red Bay actually has like their giant roaster inside of their warehouse. You could go there, you can order drinks, you can see them roasting in the back.
Got it.
So yeah, people are doing it.
That's awesome, man. I can't wait for that from you guys. But let's talk about what it's like being a business owner, especially in the Bay Area. I mean, things are so expensive, and rents, the laws, everything. Trying to find help. That's a big thing too. Is nobody wants to do the traditional jobs anymore. Everybody wants the big Google jobs. They want the Facebook jobs, and they see the big number, and nobody wants to go do everything that needs to be done anymore. What is it like being a business owner around the Bay Area specifically? And talk about things that maybe new entrepreneurs should expect if they want to try and get into that game.
Yeah, I mean, it's so much more complicated than you realize, and especially once you start hiring folks. So, and I think that was one of like the big wake up calls for us was like, what is it like to have a genuine employee? Because all the way up until 2021, we were just kind of working with friends of ours, and we would all just pitch in. We would split tips, like we would, whatever we made, like we would split it, like it was just all this kind of friend venture. Mm-hmm. And then we had our first employee, and like reality just slaps you in the face, and you're like, oh my gosh, like there's liability here.
Oh yeah.
There's payments going out. This person may or may not be happy with how I'm running things. They may not care about my actual company and my business, right? Like, so all those things can turn scary really fast. And we had to learn the hard way of like, okay, we have to vet who we're bringing in. We have to make sure we have references, and make sure you have HR. That's super important.
Wow, look at that. And
yeah.
Then talk about the money part of it. I mean, people think it's just so easy to make money, but what are the struggles that you deal with? Like, can you pay the bills? Sometimes are we going to make the rent? Are we making enough for our own family? Like, how has that dynamic affected you?
Yeah, that is like week to week, right? Like you're constantly like running the books, you're running the numbers. Did we make enough on this? Did we spend too much on this? It's tough. And yeah, it's stressful. And I believe that it's going to get to the point one day where it's like, there's enough wiggle room to where that level of stress isn't there anymore. Mm-hmm. But when you're like getting off the ground, and we're still getting off the ground, it's like, okay, I'm balancing my mortgage with my rent at the shop and payroll for these folks that rely on this business. And yeah, the money part of it is stressful.
Jeez. And then do you have kids?
Yeah. So we have kids. We got 4 kids.
4 kids.
Yeah.
That is a lot on your plate. How do you and your wife deal with that? Just the fact that you have to spend so much time at the business, and then you have to be a father, and then you have to be a husband. How do you find that balance?
There's a lot of techniques that we use because like it's managing stress levels. It's making sure you're keeping your house like in order and yet joyful, like not just in order all the time, but like actually joyful, right? So, a couple things we've been working on, and this is recently, is like just one is rhythms. So what do our family rhythms look like? What do our personal rhythms look like? So one of those is like every dinner we sit down as a family. We'll light a candle at the table. We'll all sit down together. We'll say a prayer, and then we'll all eat together. And it's like maybe 30 minutes out of the day. And with the amount of like all the running around, like that's one thing that grounds us every single night. It's like we're all going to gather. We're all going to ask like maybe kind of a an open-ended question that everybody has to answer. And we're going to have fun. We're going to laugh. We're going to, obviously our youngest is 5. So we're going to fart around and somebody's going to be under the table pulling off someone's shoe. But, it's like we're all here and we're present and we're going to connect.
Got it.
Yeah.
And did you have kids before you started the coffee business?
Yeah.
Oh, you did already?
Yes.
Okay, so you were already dealing with the young ones and then trying to start this from the ground up. So
Right.
you were really going out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's got to be a lot on anybody's plate. So how do you get through some of the dog days? And I'm asking that because we live in an area where nowadays both parents are working. They're out of the house 40 hours plus a week. They have multiple kids. It's so hard just to get from point A to point B, from work to home, and then to actually be able to say, I need to spend time with my kids. And then you just don't have enough time in the day to take care of yourself. Maybe you were somebody that used to go to the gym a lot, and now it's like I can't even get in there anymore. And then your diet gets affected because you don't have time to cook good meals, which takes time. You're looking for some of the quicker, faster meals to get through the day. And then, oh, by the way, you and your partner still have to communicate and find ways to still keep that going. So when you're doing that early on in your 20s, like, just what are some of the things that you're thinking of? Like, did you go to somebody for guidance? Did you just say, I have to power through it? Were you guys having those conversations like, maybe it's not the best idea to start a business when we have a newborn? What was that like?
That's a great question. I think we've kind of had our ups and downs with that, like as anybody has. But I think when we started off, like I was in my 20s, one of us was working, like she was usually working. I was focusing on the business. We had friends helping us. So we relied on our friends a lot for that. But yeah, I mean, there was a lot of days, there were a lot of nights where I would get done with like anything that I had to do for the business. And I would just go to my wife and be like, I don't think we could do this. Like, I don't think this is actually going to work, And that's just like the raw truth. Is like, you don't see the money coming in that you want to see come in. You're not maybe making traction. And for us, it was like the first 2 years that we were really doing it were not bad. Like there was actually growth, like there was movement, there was traction. But then it was really during the pandemic where we definitely almost just set it down, because our bread and butter at that time was roasting, but roasting specifically for coffee events. So like anytime somebody had like a corporate event or there was a wedding, like that was our bread and butter. Like that's where our money was coming from. And so with COVID regulations, like that all got shut down. And I was like, now there's no way like we're doing this anymore. Like we have to set it down. And like I will say that like having each other in those moments of like not knowing whether you could do it or not was really like, that's the only reason it still exists, is because if I wasn't feeling it, she would be there to say, no, like, let's keep doing it, and vice versa. Right.
Wow.
So,
I mean, it's real. I mean, it's real talk. That's why we're on the show, because everybody wants to get motivated and inspired and hear the good things, but there's also a lot of challenging things that come with just trying to make it in today's world. Back in the day, people can argue if this was right or wrong when the man would go out and work and the woman was supposed to stay home and take care of the kids. And now we're in a different era where everybody wants to work because everybody can go out and make a difference. But if you want to have children, trying to balance that with taking care of them, it's a lot. And people are finding out we want to do it a certain way, but reality comes in, and then the cost of living in the Bay Area the way it is, trying to buy a house is not like it was for our parents when it was just so much easier to get it done. Now you have to go way out to Stockton or the Valley, and then you're commuting over here to go to work because this is where all the money's at.
Yep.
And it tears a lot of people apart, which affects people's mental health. They get overworked, overexhausted. Some people get depressed and they don't know what the next step is. And to hear somebody else who has a business that's doing really well, he's got a great mission, a great product that you're sourcing yourself, you're roasting yourself, which brings that level of uniqueness and makes you one of a kind that people need to go out and try your coffee, which, by the way, I will get out there. It doesn't come for free. There's always a pullback somewhere. There's always something that you have to consistently work through. So the thing that stood out to me right away is just how you and your wife communicate with 4 kids and how you make that happen. Like, do you have the benefit of having a lot of family support, her parents and your parents that are there with you with the babysitting?
Yeah. So we had a ton of support. Like, that's a great question, because otherwise it wouldn't make any sense at all. So one, like, I was able to stay home because we were living in her parents' house at the time. And so they were actually kind of like housing our family and like our project at the same time, and super graciously just hosted us. Filipino family, and like for them, I think that's just like a little more natural, and they were really open to it. They loved having the grandkids there. For me, it was super unnatural and uncomfortable, but I was like, hey, but this is something that's worth pursuing. And like, if we actually get it off the ground, then yes, like we'll be able to move out and we'll be able to give back to the family in the ways that we want to. Right. So, yeah, major support there.
Was there sort of a mindset of, I thought we could do all this by 25, 30, and then realize we can, but that's got to get pushed out.
Yep.
Maybe by the time that we're 40, we will have all this and stuff. And then reality sort of sets in. I'm guessing you guys went through that too, correct?
Oh yeah, 100%.
It just, you have to readjust your goals, and you have to readjust what your expectations are, because we all see social media and think, okay, I can get all this tomorrow. And then you're like, nah, it takes a lot of work just to get to the step 1, step 2. And then you're talking about step 45 now.
Right. No, it's funny because I was just going back through like an old reflection journal that I had from when I was in college. And I literally had like a 5-year plan that I was just laughing on. I was laughing at it because I'm like, this is crazy. Like the stuff that I had planned to get done within that five-year period was just like insane.
Which was what?
So I was planning on having kids. Like I had to go back and think like, was I really planning to have more kids? And we were. So I was planning to have kids already. And I was also planning to be in the medical field at the time, and having graduated college to be like working as a youth pastor somewhere. So it was like I'm going to work full time as in the medical field and be a youth pastor and have a bunch of kids. And I think we were supposed to move to LA. So
LA, huh?
Yeah, it's like there was a lot going on.
And then at what point did you look at that 5-year plan and say, well, that is not happening, or I didn't realize that was going to take this?
I mean, I don't even know where that 5-year plan went after I wrote it. It was like something I did for college, and then it just like went in the drawer.
Oh, gotcha.
But I mean, as far as like when we knew that things were shifting, I think it was like really a couple years into like doing the youth work at the church. And I was starting to realize like, yeah, like I still have a huge passion for this, like for doing this youth work, for like that's why I went to school for it. Like I want to work with folks, you know, who need support, who need a hand up. But I don't know if this is the right venue for it. And it was less to do with like my own spirituality and more to do with like the structuring of the church. And it felt like I'm not able to like be out in the community where I want to be. Like I'm not impacting the people that need impact. I'm just sitting here waiting for folks to come to me, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so it was like, that was a shift for me to say, well, maybe this actually isn't the dream that I thought it was for the past like 15 years, you know? And I need to start doing something that's different, that is more like, yeah, I still want to make community impact. I still want to support my family. Like, what does that look like now? And so we had to completely like revise and kind of strip out like what I had been thinking for the past years, and yeah, revise that.
Man. Well, you seem to have been taking it really positive. Like you have a very positive outlook on life, which is something that we don't see a lot anymore.
Now I do, but you know.
Really? And this is not meant to be a religious show. However, that being said, I think when you grow up with a foundation where you have these morals and goals and it's ingrained in you, you see a different part of life that maybe somebody that doesn't have that sees. Maybe somebody grows up in a tougher neighborhood where there was no ambition, there was no sense of hope, there was no greater purpose, if you will. It's sort of, I'm living today and I'm trying to get enough food for tomorrow. And that's all I'm thinking of is, how am I going to live tomorrow? You're over here 20 years and I'm like in 20 minutes. And it's just, some people are like that through no fault of their own, maybe just the environment that they grow up in. What do you see as some of the bigger challenges in today's society with just trying to balance this? Because for someone who's been married with 4 kids and has their own business, by definition, you should be stressed out of your mind right now. You should probably be divorced. You know, right. She should say, you're never around. I'm going to go my own way and I'll do it with my parents and you go do your own thing. Yet you're not in that position. So what have been your secrets with that? And what do you think is some of the reasons why we're seeing less of that in society?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a loaded question, right?
It's a big one,
yeah.
But it's something that I think a lot of audience members are going to say, wait a minute, this sounds too good to be true. How does he get in through this? What am I missing? And is it just simply because me as maybe a listener may not have as much of an optimistic view of the world?
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I think it was not always like this for us. Like I'll definitely be honest, like during the first few years of like starting Motivate, like that, there was some dark some dark days. Like there was a lot of depression. There was a lot of like, because you're trying to shift like your mindset on what does my new career path look like and all of that. And you're having kids and somebody's always got to be home with them and yada, yada. Right. I don't want to like paint this like sunshine and roses picture, right? Like there was a lot of depression. There was a lot of like anxiety that went into it, of trying to get our feet back under us. But, I think now we're learning that it like if we're able to every single day get up and keep on doing like what we put in front of us, right? And it's more like the discipline side of it than the motivation side of it. And that's what's funny about like our name is the name of the company is Motivate, right? Mm-hmm. But we learned in the process is like, yeah, our goal is to motivate people. I love that. And I love being motivated. It's awesome. But most days that I wake up, I'm not motivated at all, right? And so it's like,
yeah,
like there are things that I see in front of me and that I want more than like what I'm feeling in the moment. So whether that's a future for my kids or that is, for us, it was getting our own house in the Bay, which we did. Amazing.
Congratulations.
Right. So, but it's like these bigger goals. And, I think, like I said, we relied on each other a lot. That's kind of all we had in some seasons. And then, our faith like really played a huge role, like having, I think for us, community of people that believed the same things, had the same values that we surrounded ourselves with during those times of like, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. Like having those people there to kind of like fall back on or like have deep conversations with, I was talking to my kids about this recently because I think like you mentioned culture, right? And like what we believe. Mm-hmm. And there's such like an individualism, right? And it's like, well, I'm going to do this. I can do it myself and I don't need anybody else. And so we were watching that movie La La Land with the kids. So it's about, the couple that's in Hollywood and they're like trying to make their dreams, work. And yet they're also like trying to fix their love life and they fall in love and, the whole story, whatever.
Right.
Have you seen it?
I have not seen it.
Well, anyways, that's
give me the Clip Notes version.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the gist of it. So, and, not to spoil the whole movie for you, but they end up not together, right? And they end up chasing their own dreams on their own. And I remember sitting down with the kids afterwards and I was like, you know what? I was like, why do you think it was that they chose that path rather than each other? And I was like, do you think there's anything else that they could have done differently? And so, of course they're like not that old. So they were like, yeah, we don't really know.
Yeah.
And I was like, I think one of the crucial things is one, like in the middle of their like deepest trauma and darkness of like things aren't working, right? Yeah. And we might have to split up. They didn't have anybody to fall back on. I was like, where were their mentors? And that was kind of my question to the kids is like, where was their community? Who were they talking to about this? Because in the end of the movie, the only people they're talking to and constantly fighting is each other. Mm-hmm. And I was like, who were they surrounded with? And like, that was kind of like what we left off on is like, if perhaps they had surrounded themselves with different people that had the same goals for them, they may have been able to reach after their dreams and each other and not have to pick. Right.
Yeah.
And so anyways, it was just like this kind of like aha moment for us of saying, you know what, like, I think that we can pursue both, but we're going to need a lot of community and support on this.
I mean, it's not a secret. I mean, part of the reason why our species is around when all the other like Neanderthals and all of them have been they're gone is somehow our species learned that it was important to have community, which got us through all of those times when we didn't have medicine. And it was all about how do you keep each other safe, keep each other warm, keep the family going, keep the species going. And it's interesting because we grew up, or at least I grew up, my part of the generation growing up in the 80s was the parents would tell you, we don't care what you do. We just want you to have a better life than us, which is, I think, what most parents think. I want my son and daughter to do better than I did, whatever that is for them, as long as they're happy and they're making great things in this world, that they're going to be fine. I couldn't be happier as a parent. And in today's world, when we're not, I think we were talking about off camera about how society has changed. We don't go to war anymore. Everything is just sort of diplomatic, globalization. And now people are like, well, okay, if we don't have a community that we're working for, I'm going to go do my own thing. I'm going to go build my own business. I'm going to go follow my dreams. I'm going to go make all the money. I'm going to do this, do this and do this, me, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because it's part of what's made the country that we live in so great. is that there's so many people out there wanting to do great things that it's made us number one in the world, for better or for worse. But the sacrifice with that is the sense of community has sort of given way for it. So we don't have the families that we used to. We don't have the nuclear family with the white picket fence and 2 kids and 3 sisters and whatnot. And it's sort of been the price that we're paying in society. What are your thoughts about the whole individualism thing? And while you see some of the good things, there's also some challenges with it.
I think with our American individualism, I've seen for myself, like, you know, we grew up and it was all about like, I don't know, trying to, my parents' perspective, and it's, you know, through no fault of their own, but like their perspective was like, if we can do this on our own, like, let's do it on our own. There's 2 parts of it that I see in society right now. So one is like this hyper individualism that's like kind of marked American culture for a lot of years now. But then there's this like new wave of the opposite of that almost. And it's like, no, everybody's included and everybody has to like have a voice, and everybody, you know, like, we're going to do this collaboratively, whether you like it or not, we're going to do it collaboratively, and everybody has to have a seat at the table. And I think those 2 like extremes are just that, like, they're extremes, right? Because the issue is like, once you start having those collaborative efforts, it can be good. But then like, what do you hear every time you join a new workplace? Like, you're not allowed to talk about politics or religion or anything that could potentially be like, you know,
offensive to somebody.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, what's crazy is like, those are some of the most important things that we need to be talking about. And yet, because of like the attempt at being collaborative, sometimes we have to like have this blank slate of like, no, don't worry about any of that. Like, all we're focusing on is like this job or this one thing. But I think it's important to have those conversations, and maybe not in the workplace, but it's important to have those conversations with people that think differently from you, and really like actually talk it through. Like, don't just say, we can't talk about that here. Right. So I don't know.
No, it used to be that way. It used to be, if I trusted you, I should be able to talk about religion with you, and maybe we won't agree on certain things, but we could have that conversation. You may not agree with me. I may not agree with you about, you know, something in the Bible per se. But if you see my point of view and I see your point of view, we can walk away like, all right, I get why he thinks that way. I get why she thinks that way. And that's how people have worked together in the past. But then it becomes, it's my way or the highway. I don't want to hear you if you don't believe in what I'm doing. And we're seeing that. And going back to what we talked about earlier off camera about all the wars that we used to get into and we don't now, when there's no common enemy, we just do a lot of infighting. We're almost designed to have that conflict somewhere. So if the bad guy's not away where we're on the same team against that person or that entity, now we just start fighting with each other. And yeah, it's causing a lot of issues in society. And it makes things, you know, I'm sure from your point of view as a small business owner, it makes things challenging that, you know, almost if you slip up and say one thing that somebody finds offensive, it's like, wait a minute, now I'm in trouble. And I had no means to do that. But then, however, if you build a team of people that trust each other, and even if your views don't align, because there's that trust, there's not going to be I take offense to what he says. If they really are offended, they just come to you and say, hey, by the way, you know, I know you didn't mean ill will by that. Just FYI, you know, because of what I've been through, I took it this way. You guys chat about it, and then you go and you're like, all right, we're good. We're on the same page. And that's how it should be. Yet sometimes in today's world, that's not happening a lot.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And it's like, you know, you want to be cautious of the things you're saying, and you're a business owner and a leader. But, you know, one thing that we've focused on with like our team is making sure that like the relationships that we build with them are deeper than just work. And I know people have different, you know, opinions about that, but like some people just want to keep like work, right? And I get that. But for us, and like how we've kind of developed our whole culture is like, you know what, if you're going to work for us, like we're going to be around each other so much that it's kind of important that we can at least get along. And so some of the pieces that we've put into like the hiring process is, even though it's just a coffee shop and you're just getting hired as a barista, we still like use a bunch of like the Dave Ramsey EntreLeadership stuff.
Ramsey.
So yeah, like people love and hate that guy, right? But
that's how you know you're doing something right. If you're doing something right and for his world, you're gonna have your share of haters. That's part that comes with it. If you
Yeah.
don't have people that hate you, you're doing something wrong. So, and he's very popular with his finances and obviously with his religious beliefs tied to that. He has a lot of people who believe in him. Great. He's gonna have some people that don't like him, and they're gonna want to tear him down, and he understands that. But he's gonna keep doing what he wants to do because the people that believe in him will still listen. They will still he has a life that they want. They're gonna follow it. So the people who don't agree with it, you just, you have your opinion, I have mine. It's simple. Nothing wrong with that. So that's great that you have something that you believe in with the philosophies, and you want to share that with your coworkers. And if they want to be a part of the team, they're going to embrace it. Whether they follow all the advice or not is separate, but they understand, and you guys are on the same page about something. So I get that. Definitely.
Yeah. And but it's been cool to see, like one of our pieces that we do, for our hiring is like, before we hire you, we're actually going to go have dinner with you. So that's like, who does that? Like nobody, but that was one of the things in his book. And I was like, my wife brought it up. She was like, let's try it. So we started bringing, just having dinner with the person, maybe their significant other, if they want to join. And then we just get to sit down and just chat, like actually talk about real life. And there's no pressure. Like if they don't like me, awesome. Like there's no pressure of you having to stay. If I don't like you, see you later. Like, no harm, no foul. And so we've done that. And then along with that, we've done team dinners. It's like a lot of team dinners. Our team is really small right now. And so we're still actually able to invite them over to the house. And like, we'll just open our home and say, hey, we're going to cook. And if you guys can make it out, we're going to do a team dinner. We're going to discuss a bunch of stuff for the company, and we're going to go from there. So
it sounds like your team's more of a family, because that's getting pretty deep in there. You don't see that with companies. And of course, the bigger you are, if you were a multi-chain company, there's probably no way you can keep that whole thing up.
Yeah. So it's like, how do you kind of build that into the culture of your company as you grow? Because, we're going to expand soon. And so it's like, if you double your staff size or you triple or quadruple your staff size, all of a sudden, okay, that doesn't actually work. So how do we implement that type of a culture still? Right, without sacrificing. So
that makes total sense. I mean, I applaud you for doing that, because you don't see that with very many people that take the time to say, we're going to take somebody to dinner who is applying for our company to see if we mesh. Coffee, ironically, would be something, hey, let's have a coffee thing. Okay, tell me about yourself. Are you a good fit for the company? We see that a lot, but to go to that step of going to dinner or even invite them to your house, that's something big. Again, it sets you apart from your competition. The fact that somebody who's applying says, wow, this person's, I don't know him, and they just spent X amount of dollars or time with dinner for me. Like that says something. So it's going to keep a lot of people loyal to you. I'm sure that you have very little turnover. You just shouted out somebody who's leaving to go. Is she going to school somewhere?
When was that?
I forgot her name. You made a post that she's leaving.
Right. Yeah. So exactly. So yeah, one of our baristas, she'd been with us for 2 years and had an incredible time. And we took her out to dinner after she quit too, just to kind of like just do a debrief and, just to say thank you for putting 2 years of her life into our business. Like that's a big deal. So, but yeah, beautiful to see. And then it's like, that's how you want to see a transition out, right? Like somebody who actually doesn't even want to leave, but for their own purposes, like they have to. And that relationship is still going to be intact if they want it. And if not, it's fine.
That's just incredible to hear. Again, something that we don't see a lot of, and hopefully she'll share the company's secrets with the next place she's going to. But going back into the business side of it, because part of what the show that I want to talk about is the financial side of it, and just trying to make things work at the end of the day. Like you don't have a background in finances, correct?
Correct.
So how do you think about, because we're a similar age, when you think about long term, are you thinking about, I want to retire one day and I want to just not work at age 55, 60? Are you thinking, I'm doing this job as long as I can till I can't work anymore? Maybe I'm in my 80s or 90s. Are you thinking I'm going to pass this on to my kids? Like, how do you think about long-term goals? Or do you think about financial future or financial stability in the future? Or honestly, it's just day by day. I'll figure it out when I get closer to 50 or 60.
Yeah. I mean, right now it's, day by day, we're taking one day at a time, right? But I will say that like our goal is to build the company to a place where we may not sell it, but it's sustainable enough to where we can take a salary from it and like I can't see us retiring. Like that's something I just can't see, like in a typical sense of like, oh, I'm going to retire age 65.
And then never work again.
Yeah, never work again. I just think that's such like a bizarre way to approach life. And I think my wife and I both enjoy our work so much, like the pieces of it we enjoy, we really enjoy. Right. And so those are things that I think we'll do no matter where we are, what we're doing. And so if it's mentorship, like that's gonna, like, when do you stop mentoring people? Right. If it's, making some kind of impact in the community, I hope I never stop that. Right. So, whatever the venue is that is used as the vehicle, like I don't see myself retiring. I do see myself, like, if I had to put a number out there, I would love to see us by like age 45, that we're able to just take 6 months off and go do whatever the heck we want, like go anywhere in the world and just be gone, and if you've read Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week, he makes it sound so simple, right? But
yeah, it's so easy. Anybody can do it, right?
Like, anybody can do it. Yeah, right. So, but I think like that's, we both read the book and we're like, man, like, yeah, like I think if we're building something that is actually a good product and it has good people, we're putting people in the right places that they should be, then yes, like the trajectory shows that we should be here by this time. And yeah, like.
No, I gotcha. I mean, I'm all about investing for your financial future, but at the same time, the idea of not working at age 50 or 55 or 60, which was something that our parents' generation or maybe grandparents' generation had, because we just didn't live that long back then. So if you retired at 50, maybe you're going to live 20 more years and then that was it. So it was a different mindset. Now, people are going to live to 90 or 100 years old, probably still be kicking. I got an aunt who's almost 90. She still walks everywhere and her mind's still intact. My grandmother lived till 103. I'm like, this is going to be the new age thing. So you're talking about retiring at 50, which is technically, if I lived to 103, half my life. So I'm going to spend 50 years doing nothing. Like, no, I'm going to still be doing something. Like part of what this podcast is when I'm done with my law enforcement career, is that this is something that will take over for it. And I don't know what's going to happen with it, but I enjoy doing it. If I enjoy doing it now, who knows what it'll be in 15, 20 years or whatever it is. So your mindset of, we don't plan to retire. We invest so much into this and we just want to run with it as long as we can. I think it's a great thing, and definitely some advice that your children are going to see and they're going to pick up on just how you're able to do this whole thing. What are your thoughts about leaving your children something in terms of the business, inheritance, whatever, and then how do you sort of get them on the right path of not depending on mom and dad just because they have a business?
Right. Yeah. So we have been like just putting aside like for the past, 10 years or something, like just consistently, even if it's small. But I think that's crucial. Like I guess I don't want to leave my kids with debt. Like that's one thing. And I don't know what college is going to look like in, 5 years. So our oldest is 13 right now. So in 5 years, like who knows, maybe like 4-year college will be free, maybe, or maybe, right? Like
we'll see.
We don't know. Like we're not making very fast progress on that, but we are making progress, like it or not. And so I don't know, like whatever. But I think for us, like we want to see them to be able to support themselves and feel confident to do so in whatever the world looks like. And so I think that's the key for me, is like, we don't know what the world is going to look like in 5-10 years. My youngest, like I said, is 5. So say in 13 years, she's 18 years old. In 13 years, like I have no idea, like with AI and right, like all the different things that are going to be available, and maybe she won't even need to go to school anymore, or, you just don't know. And so I think for us, it's more of like the bigger question for us is, are we preparing them for whatever the world looks like at that time? And that they can think on their feet and they can go do something that's valuable and makes an impact.
That makes sense.
So I guess that's more of our perspective. I'm not planning on leaving them like millions of dollars, like if I was going to pass away like tomorrow, but
Well, you personally, how do you think about, or how much pressure, I should say, would you put on your children to have to take care of you? Which was the old school mindset, is that you'd have kids young, and when you get old and you can't work anymore, that they would just take care of you, whether you move into your children's house and help raise their grandkids, still the way it is for many parts of the world, or you just take care of them, as they're aging. How do you view your children's responsibility to you? Do you see it as their responsibility to have to take care of mom and dad, or is it like, no, you guys do your own thing, we'll be fine, and don't worry about us?
Right. Isn't that such a weird thing? Like how
that's flipped.
Yeah.
I mean,
right.
countries that don't have the 401k or retirement system, that was how you retired. You had to rely on your children. You still do in some of these countries. I mean, I'm sure you guys have seen it out there.
Yep.
That is your retirement, is your children. And we live in a country, in an area where that doesn't have to be the way anymore. That technically speaking, if you've saved enough money and your children, or if you didn't have children, or your children didn't want anything to do with you, which sometimes that happens, that you could still find a way to survive on your own. Maybe you live in an assisted living facility, or maybe you pay somebody to come into your house and take care of you. That's an option now that just wasn't there for people for many generations. And it gets people into this mindset of, well, then if I don't need my kids to take care of me, then what's my, should they have to? Should I still depend on them? Is there an expectation that you have to bring me into your house, maybe the youngest one, because we're getting older? How do you view that? How do you instill that into them?
Right. Yeah. So I think that's like, it's so funny because I grew up going to convalescence homes, like to go take care of, or we wouldn't take care of them, but we would just visit them. So my mom would like take all of us kids. And I remember going into these old, convalescence, man, back then, I don't know how they are nowadays, but they were bad back then. Like they were stinky, and you've got people crying in their wheelchairs everywhere. And it was just like,
I think it still happens.
Yeah.
I
like
tell you that.
It's traumatic and it's sad. And it's like, where did these people come from, and where are their kids? And, I grew up. So I think like mentally, even though I knew that I didn't like it, I just thought, oh, I guess that's what people do when they get old. Like they just go to a home. And, my parents, they actually, like I said, they opened a care facility for the elderly. It was like a 6-bed home, and they completely like reversed that and would take people into their home. And it was like a registered care facility. And so it was like 24-hour care, and it's like within a family's home.
Yeah.
And so like a really beautiful picture, I think, really difficult and incredibly hard to sustain. But they did it for years, and, shout out to them for like sticking with it, 'cause it was tough. And so my grandparents actually got to go and be part of that. So for better or worse, because they had like, dementia. And so my younger siblings had to deal with, I got grandma and grandpa here, and they don't know who the heck I am. Right. And so like that experience is just such a bizarre thing, but I think beautiful at the same time. Like you're teaching those values of like, how do we respect our elders and like continue to give back to them even when they're old. And so, yeah, I would hope that I wouldn't need the support of my kids, that I would have the resources that I would need. And, I don't want to have to call my daughter to come wipe my butt when I'm, 90 years old. I just don't. Like I'll call somebody who's a professional butt wiper.
The way to put it.
Yeah.
But does that motivate you to say, here's one thing. I've seen this in my own life with other people, and especially in the job that I do. I see it in some of the calls for service that I do have. Is there's a part of older generations that once they hit maybe 70 years old, they don't really do anything. They're just sitting in front of the TV all day, or they're sitting in the wheelchair all day. They're not getting active. They're not getting their brain. They're just not giving their brain any juice to go out and do something productive. So the body just naturally just says, well, if this is what I'm doing, I guess it just wastes away, which leads to a lot of these other the diseases and people dying off early. Now you need a lot of medical care because you just don't have the body functions that you should be if you were taking care of yourself. So does that mindset motivate you to make sure you're keeping yourself fit and healthy, and that you don't put yourself in a position where now I need my kids to be able to take care of me because I don't do anything else? Does that ever factor in your mindset?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. Like I think for me, it's fitness has played like a massive role over the past like 5 years in my life. And like, I see you looking to see if
you seem like you take care of yourself. So I know that's on your radar.
Right. Just, yeah. So, I'm naturally not like a a bigger muscular person. So it takes a lot of work to like do anything that, remotely resembles having a physique. But with that being said, like, I think for me, it's a constant push towards the embetterment, and like, I would love to see myself at age 65 being healthier and stronger than I am right now. Like, I think that, and I don't think that's out of the question. I work out with guys who are way bigger than me, who are 65, who are 70, who are in there still doing their pull-ups, like still in there every single morning, and have just learned to like love the process of becoming healthy and stronger and fit. And you see how that impacts your family. You see how that impacts like your mental health. Yeah. And yeah, like that's for me, that is just like right now one of the biggest things that I can do to keep improving myself. And yes, like that allows myself, when I get to those older years, to hopefully, like, barring an injury or some like crazy, mind issue, or, like I can't remember anything anymore or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like, barring that I could be a really healthy person, all the way up until that time, and not like give in to just like letting my body fall apart.
No, that's a great mindset. I mean, I can tell you from my point of view, I'm 40. I'm in better shape now than when I was 25, because you're younger and you think, okay, I have this energy that I don't need to work out as much, or at least that was my mindset. You get older, you realize you need to work harder to keep your body going, because it's not like you were when you're 21, you could eat whatever you wanted and get no sleep and you were just fine. Nowadays, you got to put work into it. And a lot of people in our generation and older, the mindset for fitness is not, I'm trying to look like Arnold or Brad Pitt from Fight Club. It's no, I want to keep myself in shape, whatever that means, so that I can function without having to be dependent on medicine, or that I'm always in pain, or that I can't lift my grandkids up anymore. That's more the mindset that most people have as we get older, is I don't want to be a burden on people, and I don't want to be dependent on the healthcare system, which is a whole nother thing. I mean, my dad passed away in 2010, and he was on so many pills. Like, if you saw a picture of him, like a couple of days before he died, was near Christmas time, versus maybe 10 years prior to that, you'd say, wait a minute, what the? And then I remember going back and getting rid of all his pills. I'm like, there's one for this, one for that, one for this, and they're all mixing. You need to take 2 of these a day, 4 of these a day. My man, what is that doing to your body? We're just giving people, at the time anyway, we were just giving people pills to address a symptom. High blood pressure, take that. Back pain, take that. Neck issues, take that. And what it's doing to the human body, and you rely on it because that generation just trusted doctors so much. Whatever you say, doc, I'll do it. And so I thought that the pills were going to take over, and I said, no, I'm not. That's one thing I don't want to be dependent upon the system and just assume that the government or the pharmaceutical companies are going to save my rear end. I know that's on me. I got to continue to put time in the gym now when I'm in my 30s and 40s, so that when I get to that age, I already have the habits instilled in me to continue to go to the gym, continue to work out, eat as best as possible, although I am not perfect with that, and keep myself going as long as possible without having to rely on other people or other things. And it's something that I'm hoping that people can understand. That has to be something that has to be on their radar if you want to live longer, if you want to not have to depend on your children to have to take care of you at a later age. Because then think about if you were that child, like, well, I got to take care of mom and dad. I'm willing to do it, but they made choices in their lives that kind of put them in a position where now they're asking me to do all this. So there's always that split where you're saying to yourself, yeah, I want to help my parents, but man, how come you guys didn't take care of yourself earlier? So, it would make my life easier to show that you had the ambition and the willingness to actually do that. And the fact that you're thinking about it now is great, but I'm curious, we talked about it a little bit earlier. How do you put that and fit that into your life with the business and the family? Right.
You just don't sleep. So
that's what it is. You're pulling back on sleep. Okay.
Yeah. That's why we have the coffee. So we're good. Yeah. There's no sleep.
Jesus. I can believe that with as much coffee as you probably drink every day.
I'm trying to cut down because that, like, the coffee keeps you awake, right? But then it like triggers your anxiety, and then, it's a bad loop. So I've had to, it's like you just have to be disciplined, because you know that if you don't get up at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning when everybody else is sleeping, like, you're not going to work out. Like, you're just not going to, after you get home at 6 o'clock at night, the kids want to see you. Yeah. You got to finish making dinner. You're all going to sit down as a family. You're going to not finish dinner until 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, put them to bed. And then Like you're going to clean up dinner. It's going to be 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. And then you're ready to fall asleep again, So it's like, you don't have that much wiggle room.
Gotcha.
And yeah. So
it makes sense. No, I get it.
Yeah.
And your wife is Filipino, correct?
Correct.
Is she from the Philippines or she's from here?
She's from here.
Okay. So how does she, just in your guys' conversations, how does she not get influenced by Instagram, social media, the idea that I should be able to go out and do my own thing and he's not paying me attention anymore because he's so focused on the business? How does she not get in that mindset to be able to say, we're a family, we're together as one? That's a big conversation. Nobody wants to talk about it around here, but off camera, I hear that from a lot of people is, well, she wants to go do this and I have my business. I have to support the family, but then she wants me to be around and I can't, I don't have any time. What's your guys' secret sauce with that? Or is there one for you?
Right. I think it's a compromise. It's a compromise on that because I think we may have erred more on the side of like putting effort into the family than into the business, if that makes sense.
I get it.
Because, you're going to sacrifice one and you don't have time for everything. And so when push comes to shove, it's hard for me to say like no to the family and like say yes to the business. Like I want to see the business grow and like keep growing. But if it's unsustainable, I feel like for us, because we're such like a tight family unit, like if it's unsustainable, then it's not going to work. So if we can find a way to like do our best to balance it, then we will. And that sometimes looks messy and
I believe it. Yes.
But she wants to see it. Honestly, she wants to see it succeed as much as I do. Mm-hmm. And so because of that, there's been times where I'm the one who is like, no, I should probably stay home with the family right now. And she's like, no, like we have this opportunity, you should go do it. And so I don't know. I'm blessed, man. Like with having somebody she doesn't even drink coffee.
And she doesn't even drink the product, man. You guys spend so much time putting it together and doesn't even want to drink it.
Right. But she believes in it, like in the mission of it so much. It's like, no, like keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it, keep trying.
That's great.
So, yeah.
I mean, it's an inspiration for a lot of people to know that you can have a family. You can both work. Is she working or she stayed at home?
She's working.
So you both have your own careers,
right.
4 kids, businesses. On paper, the way that everything is working, if you just followed social media, you guys should be divorced already. I think we talked about that earlier.
Right.
But you found a way to make it work. You talked about your compromises, and I'm guessing communication is a big part, right?
Yeah, communication is huge. And so
what does that really look like for you?
Right. It's got to be so intentional.
Well, because everybody says communication is the key when it comes to something like this, but nobody explains it. So what does it mean to you when you say communication?
Yeah. So typically what happens for us, like our breakdown is I will, it's not that I won't be like physically present. I may be physically present, but I'm like mentally and emotionally gone, like just completely absent. Like all I'm thinking about is what's happening with the business or what's not happening with the business. And so I'm kind of gone. And so I won't even realize that it's been like a few days since we've actually sat down and had a conversation. And that's when kind of like she'll start asking the questions you're talking about earlier, like, hey, where are you? Like, what's going on? And so something we've started doing recently is just doing like couch conversations in the evenings. And so we don't have a lot of time. I mean, we're putting the kids to bed by 9 o'clock. And but she brought it up and I was like, you know what? Like, I think that's, if we're going to, her question was like, when are we supposed to talk? Like, when are we supposed to talk? Like, we never get to actually like sit down and talk. And so in my head, it's more of like, it's going to happen spontaneously, or we're going to do it while we're driving. Right. And I think probably, as you know, like you're a podcast host, like you understand, like these conversations don't happen sporadically. Like they're very intentional. Mm-hmm. And so for us, our conversations happen at night. And I told her, like, I said, if I go to bed, good luck, because I'm going to be asleep in like 5 minutes. So yeah, in order for this to work, we have to be sitting up and we'll be on the couch and we'll have something intentional to do or read or talk about. And then we'll go from there. So we're working through a book right now. That's this one specifically on like marriages. So we're going through that. There's other conversations we'll have too. So like I'm going through another book on like overthinking and anxiety. So last night I pulled it out and like, hey, like, you want to hear what I'm learning? So I pull it out and we just have like a quick 15-minute conversation about what I'm learning about myself. And so it's kind of these more intentional conversations that they seem a little forced at times, right? Until you start doing them regularly. And then it starts to build and grow. And I feel like for us, that's been one of the best things that we've done over the past few months.
Do you ever get the pressure, whether it's from her or it's society or family, anybody else, to be something that you know you're not? Like, do you get the pressure that I'm supposed to be the Superman and everybody wants me to, but really this is where I want to be at? Do you got that going on?
Oh, yeah.
So how do you cope with that? How do you push it through to say, this is really where I'm at? This is my happy place, if you will, that I can't do X, Y, and Z, or that if you're asking me to do it, that it's going to put me in a place that's going to really stress the relationship or the family out more. How do you communicate that?
Right. I think I'm getting better at it. It's hard to say that I can't do that for a guy or for anybody, right?
Yeah, I know.
Like just to look somebody in the face and say, no, actually, I can't do that. Because you want to say that you can do everything. Like it's different if you say, I'm choosing not to do that. But when you say, I know I cannot do that, like I mentally or time-wise, whatever it is, like I can't. So there are different, requests from different, whether it's from church and they want to schedule you to help with something, or, you've got friends that want to have dinner with you. And it's like, okay, actually, no, we can't do that. So I think in order to like answer those questions, it's really just, I don't know. It's like a laying down of like your pride almost, right? Because you mentioned Superman, and that's how we view ourselves, right? Like so that's what we want to be, and that's what we think we're supposed to be. But then there's times where you just have to ask for help, and so I guess that's for me is like learning how to ask other people, whether it's my wife. I've got a group of guys that we kind of connect on like business and life and family. I'll shoot them a text. Hey guys, like I'm not doing so hot today. And we'll just talk it through, like you available for a quick phone call, we'll do a quick check-in and talk it through, because, and that helps so much because in your head, you think, oh, I've got to do, right. And if I don't do it by this time, then everything is screwed.
Well,
and then
go ahead.
Well, yeah, if you have that second voice coming in to say, dude, like you're stressing for no reason. Like that's actually not that important. That's your crucial piece. Like I know who you are. I know what's important to you. Go do that.
Gotcha. What I was going to bring up is the one thing I didn't hear you mention is the church. And I know you're a religious guy.
Right.
It used to always, from what I had heard, is people would go to the church first. They say, okay, I need to talk to my pastor or the reverend, or I need to go to confession, whatever it is. Like that's their coping mechanism. And in modern times, it seems that there's just more of a modern way to do it. Like, do you think, just in your personal opinion, that from the religious side of it, people need to rely less on just the church to solve all their problems, that there really is a different way to see a bigger picture, or that maybe because people aren't going as much to the church first to go solve their problems, that it's making things worse? What do you think about that?
I think it's both, but I think that my specific scenario, I'm like close friends with the pastor. And so there'll be times where I just don't want to burden him with like all the crap that's happening in my life.
I'm sure he's getting a lot of it from everybody else.
Exactly. So when I call him, I want to be all like, hey man, how are you doing? Like, let's talk about, let's talk about your life instead of, I'm not going to be a burden. So it's a funny dynamic, right? But I agree. I think that, a lot of us, like in this generation, we have veered away from previous generations, like reliance on the church to have our strength or our, sense of accountability or whatever it is that you're getting from there. Right. So instead, like where are you getting it from? Probably validation at work, like personal development, all of that. And some of that stuff is valuable. And of course, like that's important. But I think like why I said both is because if you're missing out on like the spiritual side of your life, you're missing a really crucial component, I feel. At least that's what I've found is that, if I'm neglecting my spiritual life and my own spiritual practices, then all the other pieces kind of start, that's like the glue, like the other pieces kind of start to fall apart. And so, and two, I'll bring this up. Like, I think that the the church and Christian church for us is like a hub of resources almost, like on a really practical level, because you have a group of people who are all kind of, single-minded, or they're thinking the same way, right? And those people know people who know people. So all of like the resources that we started the company with was within like that kind of general like hub.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got that as like, that is your community, and you kind of enter into it, and you choose how much you want to take advantage of it or not. But for me, like I said, I've got 3 guys, and we meet up and we talk and we're real with each other. And you can get that anywhere, obviously, but I think it's like that glue component of our shared like spirituality that has helped.
So do you think in the future, or I should say now, being the future from our previous generations, that this new way that modern religion is teaching the young kids is a better thing, or that it's getting away from what the purpose was, and maybe that's why we're seeing so many issues in society? I'm not blaming that as the one reason, but I hear that a lot is because we've lost our old faith values. Whatever your faith is, if you're Islam, Jewish, Christian, Catholic, whatever, that breakdown of an overall theme of why we're even here is causing so much of the issues that we're having. But then you could say, well, if you're not, dependent upon what your religion tells you, it allows you more freedom to see the world differently and meet new people and accept things differently. How do you view that with how, some of the young kids maybe in the church now can take that and run with it in the way that the world is with what we're living through? Because it's just different than it was for our grandparents.
Yeah, we've been actually going through a book with some of the students at our church. So I'm not like the youth pastor at the church, but I'm part of a team of folks that we meet like once a month with the kids, and we gather them together, junior high through high school, and we'll meet up, and we're actually going through a book, and it's 10 questions about God every teenager should ask, or something like that, and answer. And so it's like basically an apologetics book that teaches you like answers to your faith, like the big questions.
Gotcha.
And I think that is a component of like what this generation is looking for, that past generations didn't do such a great job at. And so you've got, at least from my perspective, you've got kids who have like real questions, and kids today are ridiculously smart and fast, right? And have access to all the information in the world.
All these iPads, man.
Yeah, like you and I didn't have that when we were growing up.
Yeah.
At least until we were in our teens, And even then it was like rudimentary. Like you're going to find some random Comic Sans website that somebody just threw together, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I think kids have access to so much information, and they need a grounding space of like, how do I sort through this, and what questions am I supposed to ask? Because they don't know. And so I think that is more what is missing from that like spiritual, like faith community type of background, that a lot of kids are missing, and they do have questions and they don't know how to ask them. But if they have someone who's kind of there to help guide them through that, I think that is where they find value. And more clarity to like what is the meaning of life if we're all going to be robots one day, right? Like, and there's no, it's like, there's no real purpose. And so if there's no real purpose, then why does morality matter? And why does anything that I do matter? And why is it, why can't I just sedate myself with any drug that's there? And why can't I, like whatever rules that were standardized for, a certain number of years in the United States. And those are like kind of thrown out with all of the other liberations that have happened in the States, like, sexual freedom and freedom of choice and freedom of gender and freedom of, like, you have all these freedoms, and, praise God for freedom. Like it's great to not be like constricted, but once all of those are thrown out, then what do you do? And what is the meaning? What's the point?
Well, it's something that I think that the next generation is going to have to figure out, because, hey, we've seen what happens in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and it's all sort of mismatched. And now you're growing up in 2010, 2020. It's like, all right, now you guys got to figure out what you want to do for your generation, how you're going to take it to the next step forward, because we all sort of found what worked for our generation, and it may not be the same advice for you in the coming years, which is one thing that's always gotten people is, your parents tell you this is what you're supposed to do, but it's based upon what worked for them. And then it doesn't account for the things that happen in modern life. It doesn't account for social media, technology, the cost of living, wherever you're at. You can go buy a house. Well, can't buy a house here anymore. Look at how much it costs for the same house you bought for $100,000 is now $1.5 million. Like, yeah, I can't afford that anymore. So I need a different path, or I need to find a different way to have things work. And going back to the business, like when you decide to actually make it happen, you probably didn't have anybody to tell you, hey, here are the steps to start a business, correct? It was all just, hey, okay, I want to, so I have to go Google it and then just go from there. Mm-hmm. So I'm guessing it was a lot of trial and error and a lot of things that you learned that, well, not doing it that way anymore. So you're going by trial and error to make yourself the best that you can. And it's doing something that you can pass on to your kids when they grow older. Here's what I did. Here's what worked. Here's what didn't work. Here's what may not work for you, but you can see how it worked for our business and decide what you want to do with it. And I don't know, it's just an interesting position to be in. So I'm really curious what your thoughts on that are.
Yeah, I think it's funny because I was telling somebody, it was like, man, like literally business plans were so hard. Like that was the hardest part of the business for me, like when I was first starting. And one, people always tell you like business plans are just all BS anyways, but
it's only for the banks, I guess, right?
Yeah, it's only for the banks. But then too, it's like you got ChatGPT now, and it's like you could build any business you want in like 3 seconds. And just throw it in there like, hey, I think I want to do this, this, and this, and it'll spit back this business plan to you, Mm-hmm. And so I think what's beautiful about like our process is that it built in the like resilience and grit that were necessary to take us through the pandemic, that were necessary to take us past year 5, like to keep on going. And those are things that, yeah, you might have a plan to do it, but if you don't have like the grit that's built into it by learning things kind of on your own, you may not stick with it. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
it's more of I put that statement out there as just more to put it out there to say it's a lot that people are going through. It's a lot to think about. It's a lot that you had to learn on your own. And for anybody who wants to start their own business in the future, it's, while on one side of the coin, the information is out there, so it's easier to find it. But then putting it into practice, because now everybody sees the same advice and everybody's doing it. Now you're dealing with the competition side of it. And even you, how do you guys keep yourself going when it seems like everybody and their mother is opening up their own coffee shop, the one down the street? There's a part where you want to support other small businesses, but then there's also a part that's, I got to stay in business, so you are my competition. So how do you balance that?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when we opened the shop in Oakland, we didn't know that another coffee shop was opening literally on the corner, like down from us.
Really?
Like 2 minutes, like 3 minutes walking distance. So we've dealt with that like on a very intimate basis. And so we've had like to deal with like the mental battle of knowing that our competition was right there and not letting it get in our head, I guess, because that like we're the youngest, coffee company, or we're the smallest, or we're whatever it is that you kind of have in your head that's like ringing around, like, oh, we're the newest guys, or whatever the case may be. And these guys are bigger. They have 4 locations and they do this, all this, whatever. It was tempting to like try to combat them or try to compete with them. And then all we could think was like, you know what, like, let's just keep on doing what we've been doing. Mm-hmm. So it was a very like real example of that, I guess, is what, kind of your competition question was, because, hey, this company actually is right there. Like they're physically right down the street from us. They obviously had more money that they were able to put into their company, and, all these other things that we could look at and say, oh man, they're going to kill it. They're going to crush us. Yeah. And for 2 weeks they did. Like a lot of our customers were like, oh, who's that cool new coffee shop down the street? And then they all came back, and the same things that had kept them there for so long just continue to keep them. So,
well, another thing with that is where you guys chose to open your shop up. On paper, you might think, where's the best place to open a coffee? I should open up in downtown San Francisco. Everybody's there, the financial district. Or I should open up in a really chic neighborhood that everybody's coffee connoisseur, so I can stand out more. And you guys chose Oakland, and you chose Lake Merritt. And if you're listening to the podcast, you're from the Bay Area, we all know the challenges that Oakland has. And even in Lake Merritt, a really nice part of Oakland, even that has its own set of safety challenges. And from the law enforcement side of it, I can tell you exactly like what they have to deal with over there. But you stuck with that. So what is it about the community over there that says, I want to open up my business in an area that on paper might not be the safest, and on paper might not make me the most money, but I want to do it here. What was your mindset with that?
It's because car break-ins are so exciting. You know?
Is that what it is?
Yeah, it's like it's just exciting. It kind of keeps
it adds the ambiance, I guess.
It keeps you on edge, right? It's like keeps you awake.
Yeah.
No, well, a couple things. Like one, in the back of my head, I did have Oakland as a potential spot that I wanted to be in. We had met in Oakland. We went to a college in Oakland. That's where my wife and I met. And then I had done work in East Oakland with some youth programs for some years. And so in the back of my head, I was always somewhat wanting to return to the city, or the town as it's called. But yeah, like I did want to return there, or potentially like Berkeley. Like those two cities were like in the back of my head, but it seemed like too expensive, and it seemed like it was just kind of out of like it was out of the question. What ended up happening is I was like mid-pandemic. It was 2020. I was trying to make ends meet. I think I mentioned this earlier. Like we were trying to decide whether to keep the company or not. And nobody was doing catering. They didn't need coffee catering for anything because nobody was meeting up, right? No events.
Yep.
And so I was trying to figure out just how to make ends meet. And so I actually went the direction of tech. And so tech sales is like easy entry point. And so I started, I went through a boot camp. It was like a 3-month boot camp. And I was just going to be a tech salesman. Like I was just going to sell software. It's brutal.
A great place in Silicon Valley to do that.
Absolutely. So, and I mean, so many different like SF companies and everybody's online. So the boot camp went well. I started interviewing at like all these different companies, sending my resume out. And I was just not getting any like feedback. And, you know, it was like just a tough time to like get into tech. And I was just struggling. And my personality is such that like, I will talk about Motivate wherever I go. And so I think that like so much of my love for my company was bleeding through, that these companies were just like, dude, this guy's going to bounce as soon as the pandemic's over. He's gone, you know, like he's just using us. And I couldn't even hide it. So that was actually feedback that I got from people. So for good or for bad. And then March or April of 2020, I was about to go into an interview, and a guy that I had connected with in Oakland texted me, and I'd run his coffee shop like once or twice before. So he hits me up and he says, "Hey man, like we're about to sell our coffee shop. Like, would you be interested in buying it?" And I'm like, that's crazy. Like what timing, you know, what crazy timing. Like we need to move in a different direction. Like we need to actually like get a space. Like, yes, we would love to. And then he texts me back like 3 seconds later, actually, we want to just give it to you. And my jaw just like drops. I'm like, who texts that to somebody, you know? Like, and so I FaceTimed him and I'm like, dude, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, like we just became pastors of a church in Oakland. It's called the Movement Church. And it was like, we have a salary that's going to like take care of our family. We're going to be okay. And having the coffee shop is just too much of responsibility on my plate right now. It's like, I loved kind of seeing your mission and your heart back when you visited 2 years ago, and we just want to give it to you. Like we just want to hand it over.
Wow.
So that is why like Oakland, like that's the story.
That's awesome. It's how funny how things work out. Whether you believe in faith or that there's a higher power there that's making it happen. It's still the fact that it actually happened and just the way things work. That's pretty awesome, man.
No, the timing was insane.
And everything was already set up for you. It was already a coffee shop. I'm sure that the equipment that he had just, okay, here you go. Because why throw it away when you're going to do the same exact thing in the shop? Correct?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like all the equipment was there, working, fully functional. Customer base was pre-existing. Like even some of their, like it was just ridiculous. Like you just turnkey, like absolute turnkey.
So do you have a signature drink? Like, is there one, I mean, I don't know if there's much you can do with coffee drinks, but is there one thing that you say, this is what people love when they come here? It's the latte, or it's some fancy thing. You know how Phil's Coffee has that mojito mint thing?
Right.
That's their signature drink. What is yours?
So ours is like, so our menu is like super, we're sticklers for like just keeping it the bare minimum of like, we have to make sure our espresso is on point and our black coffee is on point, because if not, then the rest of the menu is all screwed up. So we actually get a ton of requests for like just espresso or pour overs. But the one drink that people have absolutely loved, and it's seasonal, so unfortunately it's not available right now, but the honey lavender latte, man, iced with oat milk. That's so good. It's so good.
I'm not even a coffee drinker, and it sounds good.
Yeah.
I've heard about that lavender. What makes it seasonal?
So
Lavender?
yeah, and we just do it seasonally because, if you have it around too long, then it's like people don't, it loses the excitement, right?
You're still playing that game. I got it.
Yeah. So we just pick like one drink per season. So that's why it's seasonal. But we do use local honey. So we'll use like Northern California honey, and we'll put that in the drink. So it's supposed to help with your allergies, right? And so that's kind of the idea behind it.
But that's pretty smart that you make it seasonal, because now if I had it and I enjoyed it, now it's not available. Well, when's it coming back? In 2 months, 3 months? Okay, well, I'm coming back. And you're building up that anticipation. So when you do get it, it's like, wow, that's exactly the drink I remember. It's the best one around, and I can only get it for 3 months out the year or whatever it is. So
exactly.
That's a very smart idea there. I mean, good job on that one. So, well, what else is about the coffee shop that, in fact, I never asked you specifically, the way you spell motivate without the E, what's the deal with that? I mean, I'm sure that there's a reason for it other than just it looks better.
Right. Can I put this up?
Yeah, put it up.
So there's our cold brew. The spelling, man, I have like so many dumb stories about the origin of it that are not true. And I always tell people like
legend of it,
made up like legend. Yeah. Like it's from my grandfather's boat that he passed down to us and yada, yada. Right. No, it was just like, I think we were playing around. I was just getting into graphic design and like putting together fonts and things like that. And, so I started playing around with the word motivate. I thought it was a really cool coffee company name. It was like a play on words of like, not a play on words, but like we want to motivate other people to pursue their passions and their dreams. Like that was the idea. And this company is also helping us to be motivated and move forward. And, we talked about that earlier, but, so that was the idea. And then I put the long A, right? So that's like the little grammar thing. So in the dictionary, in the old school dictionaries, we don't have those anymore, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember like
what's a dictionary? What's a phone book?
The upside down E, and then like the O has the line over it, and they all have like names and like, but it's pronunciation tools. So anyways, it was just like a really nerdy thing to just put the line over it because it's a long A. So motivate, no E. Most people, when they see it for the first time, call it like motivat.
So it's supposed to be motivate without the t. Instead of motivate, it's motivate.
Just motivate.
Motivate.
Yeah, okay. Exactly. So instead of being motivat, like it should be pronounced, because it has the line over it, the A says its name. So like I said, it's a nerdy thing, but
that makes you unique and that separates you. If you just wrote motivate, that was it. It's, okay, it works, but changing it up a little way, it's no one else is going to think to do that. No.
And what's funny is like people just like, they'll talk about this for about 5 minutes, which is what I love, because I'm like, if you'll talk about my name for 5 minutes, you're not going to forget it.
It's something as simple as that. It helps remind people. It helps just reinforce that belief in there. Like Motivate Coffee. I don't know, just something about it. And then when you reinforce it with the product that you sell, it sticks with people. So I'm sure you have plenty of clients that would pay double for your coffee than go to Starbucks and get the same on paper drink, whether it's a latte or Americano or whatever it is, because of how that impacts their life and how they relate to it. And also just the fact that you put it in a jug instead of a cardboard container that's probably cheaper, correct?
Right, totally.
Like, where did the idea of the jug come from?
So this one is, you could recycle it, but we use these ones in the shop for all of our cold brew. So we use a Japanese cold brew tower called the Yama Tower. And so it takes 8 hours for it to brew. So you basically put a certain measurement of coffee in the top. It's a top secret recipe,
Yeah.
You put a certain measurement of coffee in the top, right? And then you put above that is another beaker that is just ice water. And so the ice water has a little dripping mechanism that you can control. So 1 drip per second, about something like that. And then it's dripping down into this bed of coffee, which goes down into a spiral, which goes down into your glass container. Like I said, it takes 8 hours to brew, so you want to do it overnight. And then from there, you pour it into the jugs and throw it in the fridge, and it's good for about 3 days.
3 days. Wow. So legitimate cold brew coffee.
Yeah.
Not the ones you buy at, your local Whole Foods or whatever that says it's cold brew in a plastic container.
Right. Yeah. So this is like very extremely fresh.
Now, is that something that has caught on with people? Like, do people come in just to get that? Like, I need my cold brew. Give me the jug.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So we would like to start selling the actual jugs, or like you can do refills and things like that. So far it's people that just love the cold brew. And so they'll come in and they'll buy it without, usually they don't want the ice because they want to take it home.
Gotcha. That's a smart idea. I got to make sure that we promote that on there, because I didn't even realize that there was a story with the jug. And then the more I think about it, the reason why you do it with the Motivate label, it puts it all together. Right. Again, things that a lot of business owners may not think about. They just slap a label on something and here's the product. But to be able to explain it that way, it reinforces why it's so unique, and you can't get this anywhere else.
Right.
And then once you taste the product, it's like, oh, that's the icing on the cake. That's what really makes me want to come back and get it. What's been some of your feedback from customers in terms of how they spread your but how they spread your name out to other people and what their friends have been saying about it?
It's so cool when you hear the stories, or like you see somebody wearing some of your merch or something like somewhere else. Like that was one thing we always said is like, man, once we see somebody that knows about Motivate and then they tell us without us like knowing who they are, like that, we've made it, right?
Yeah.
Like, have you heard about Motivate? Like, yeah, actually I'm the owner. Right. But we had that experience like a few times, and it's so cool. Like we do coffee pop-ups. So, or catering events where we set up a cart and then we're serving full on espresso bar. And but when you do get to hear like, oh, my cousin told me about you guys and I couldn't wait to actually see you, and now I get to see you, and like this is so cool. Or we were at the SF Coffee Festival, and you've got random people at Fort Mason, random people who like want to come and talk to you because they've been following you for so long, or they want to take a picture with you, and it's like, this is hilarious, but it's awesome. It's so cool.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
What is the future in your mind of Motivate? I know you say you want to expand. Like, do you want to expand in the Bay Area? Do you want to go abroad? Do you want to stay in the state? What are your thoughts on that?
Abroad would be cool. But no, we've thought about mostly in the States. I think I'd like to keep it local for now, like within California. Mm-hmm. We've got a few different folks that we're in talks with right now, and looking to see how we expand, probably either this year or into the next year.
Wow. So, that's really ambitious. That's pretty exciting that, it's only been a couple years. And how long has the shop been open?
Yeah, 2 years.
2 years.
2 years.
Already 2 years. This is something that usually it takes people 5-10 years, because you have to spend a lot of time just building the foundation and getting your name out there. But you're doing this in 2 years, or potentially doing it in 2 years. That's really impressive, man.
Yeah. So we would love to see probably 3 or 4 shops within like this area. I think that would be really cool. We have, like I said, our catering whole component, that being built out to where it's running consistently. It's week in, week out. And then just to see ourselves like expand within, I don't know about grocery stores. I've never really liked that, because like you said earlier, it can sit there for how long and get so old.
It can. And then if somebody buys it that's been sitting there for a week and they try it and say, it's all right. Now they associate it with, that's the product. That's what I'm used to.
Yeah, I can't.
And then when they go to your shop, if they ever go there, it's, I've already had that at the Whole Foods. And no, this is like fresh. We just brought it in. Taste the difference. I can see why you wouldn't want it in the grocery stores.
But yeah, I mean, coffee shops that like, care about their product and their offering. Absolutely. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
One thing we haven't gotten to yet that I want to get into now is, on top of all this, you're still involved in a youth group. You're still involved with, can you explain that? Because that was an exciting stuff that you explained earlier about the youth group you're involved in.
Yeah. So was it the one at the church or the nonprofit?
The nonprofit. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So that's man, the balance of trying to do like all of that it's a lot, right? So, but for us, I think when we were going back to like mid-pandemic, because a lot of things were happening, I started talking to a buddy of mine who worked at this nonprofit called La Familia, and they were looking for somebody to run the youth employment program, or to be one of like the case managers. Mm-hmm. And so they had brought me on. And so because I have a background in, working with youth and specifically, I'd worked in Oakland for some time with students who had types of barriers to entry similar to what I'm working with now. That's who I work with. So I work with a caseload of, I think it's like 50 kids, and it's over from Tri-Valley to Tri-City to Hayward, and it's working with these students who all have some type of barrier to enter the workplace. And it used to be a probation, like YEP.
Mm-hmm.
And so this one was funded by probation in Alameda County. And so I think what was appealing to me is like, okay, this is exactly like what I want to do. And I'd mentioned earlier the whole transition out of kind of the church work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, you know what, like if I can work within the actual community and do this type of work, I think this is more my vein. This is where I want to be. And so, yeah, so that company, it really, I don't know, during the pandemic, it was a lot of stuff on Zoom. We were meeting with students, like barely even meeting them in person. All of our workshops are on Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to help them get their resumes done, but then if they're going to go apply somewhere, like no businesses are hiring. So there was like a lot in those first couple years that were challenging, but we had our first like in-person workshop a couple weeks ago,
Mm-hmm.
and that was huge. It's huge. It's tough. Like you're working with a really challenging demographic that most people have already written off for sure.
Yeah, I definitely believe that. And we were talking about this earlier. You were saying you want to help these kids so much, but sometimes they're just so far gone and they don't have the support that no matter what you do, it's a losing battle. And how do you get through that to make sure that you can still, maybe you can't help 4 out of the 5, but that one person that you did help to get in the right track, how does that keep you motivated, knowing that most of these kids who go through this, maybe you're just going to fall back into the cycle?
Yeah, I mean that is the hard part, right? Like there's 2 types of phone calls that you get that are like polar opposites, right? Like one is, oh, I just want to let you know, like the guy you were working with, he got shot, right? He's gone. And like you're in law enforcement, so you understand these, like that's the type of call, obviously, is just like devastating. And granted, you're still grateful for the work that you did with them. It's still valuable, and you hope that there was some value for them and their family. The call that you want to get, and that we do get, is, hey, like, you're doing a quick check-in call. Hey, I'm working at such and such a location. Like, thank you so much for the work you do with me. Like, I would not be here without the fact that you kind of like stood by me when I was struggling. And those types of conversations are few and far between, right?
Right.
But I could get one a year. Like, just give me one a year. And typically I do. And you get one of those like reports from somebody you worked with in the past saying, hey, thank you so much, because like I wouldn't have made it if you hadn't been there.
Is there a common denominator you've seen with the ones that have made it out of the program? Was it the amount of times they were coming to the program? Was it they had parents who were still involved? Or was it just luck? This person made it. There was nothing really consistent about him or her compared to the last person. Anything like that?
I don't have an answer to that. Yeah. I don't know if I've seen a common thread.
Gotcha.
Because, I mean, there's some of them that you're going to be fine. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Like you have a few issues and, maybe you just didn't have your resume fixed. Like, you're going to be okay.
What do you think is driving some of these? We're in, arguably the best country in the world. We have our challenges. That's not a secret to anybody, but overall, probably the best country in the world. What is it about some of these kids growing up that in the best country in the world, they fall into this area where they're either committing crime or they're dying young or they don't know what a good life is? Do you think it's education? Do you think it's just, you're born in a certain city and that's kind of the way things are at over there? Do you think it's a much bigger issue involving politics? What are your thoughts on why just some kids grow up in that area and we seem to not be able to know how to solve the problem with getting, youth gangs and whatnot out of the picture?
Yeah. I've seen with the common denominator and that. Sorry, I'm just processing for a quick second.
Yeah, you good?
But I think because something hit me and it had never hit me before. Um, I've seen more folks, I feel like, who are in really bad situations, who we always talk about like the dad being missing, right?
Yeah, that's a big one.
But I feel like more where the mom is missing, which is really interesting. I'd never really like put those two things together. But like some of the folks who are like really having a tough time, like the dad may still be there, but like the mom is actually absent. And so, yeah, that's just a really thing that I don't know. Like that just kind of hit me right now.
Absent, like she doesn't want anything to do with the kids, or it's a drug issue, or
Yeah,
she's
drug
always
issues,
working.
but mostly like drug issues, and doesn't want anything to do with the kid. Like, no idea where my mom is.
Right.
She doesn't care, and dad may still be there, like technically, but yeah, it's super interesting. But I think like on a broader scale, it has a lot to do with like the family dynamic. I've seen kids, who are wilding out, even though both of their parents are there.
Yeah,
like
there's always that.
Of course, happens. Like, but I think it does have a lot to do with the family dynamic, and drugs plays a huge role in that.
Yeah. Do you think it's education, and not just education in terms of get your high school, get college, whatever, but even the education about what opportunities that you have? Because you can make an argument that we're not teaching kids in underprivileged areas of the country what it means to have safe sex, so they don't know. And you have young women who are 14, 15 years old, and they're popping out babies. The guy who's probably father of that child has no idea how to live life. He's probably 16, 17 years old. He doesn't know how to make it in this world. I mean, we're in like the 35 to 40-year-old range. We're at that point now where we're like, hey, this real life thing, this is a lot. It's a lot to make money. It's a lot to balance people. It's a lot to, have responsibilities that we had no idea when we were 25. You think somebody who's 15 has any clue what that means? And it ends up the grandparents now are the ones taking care of everything, and they're overwhelmed because they're in our age group and they have to go work as well. And so some people say, all these social programs can be great, but if we're not doing anything to solve the problem in the beginning and let people know that if you don't have if you don't have two parents, that already sets you aside, technically speaking, if you look at the numbers.
Right.
But then just because you may grow up in that, is all hope lost? Or can we get you something early so that maybe you don't fall into the realm of now we're making younger and younger babies who are raised by babies essentially, and the cycle keeps repeating itself. From the law enforcement side of it, some of the things that we see are kids who are 11, 12 years old breaking into cars, carrying guns.
Yep.
And it just seems to be getting younger and younger. But when we were growing up, they were all, 18, 19, 20. It's like, yeah, they're kids, but they're in that teenager range. Now they're like barely in double digits and they're doing stupid stuff. And with no parents around, or with the parents being not that much older, it's causing a lot of issues. Now, what are your thoughts on that whole dynamic?
Right. Like, isn't that crazy to think that, like, I always think of, because my son is 13. So like to think of him like being involved in those types of things. And because I work with these students, I know like how young they are when these things start. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, it's just wild to me because and I have the conversations with our kids because of what I've seen and who I work with.
Yeah.
Like, hey, these are some of the things to like avoid. Like, we're not going to do this, and here's what happened. I'll share, some of the bare bones of like stories with them too. Like, hey, this is what happened with this kid. And this is like, you need to avoid this for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, I think that's a big question. And I think education can help, right? Like for kids to know and feel safe. I also think that, it's not necessarily they don't have access to the information at time, like we talked about earlier, like you have access to all the information. That's why it's kind of baffling for somebody looking on. Is like you probably knew that wasn't right, but then, like you're 14, 15 years old. And so you just made these decisions based on what? Like, what structure did you have that allowed you to make these, or what structure did you not have that allowed you to make these decisions? And I'm thinking back to like one couple that I was working with a couple years ago, and they were 15 and 14, I believe, boy and girl, had a baby, they kept it. the aunt was like very involved in making sure that they were okay. And it's just like it's a baby taking care of a baby. You know, the dad, and it's so hard to even call him that. It's like, but he's the dad, he's the father. He's like, he's got the baby outside and it's like freezing cold out and the baby has no hat, socks on. And you're like, this is what this kid is living with, right? Like, this is scary. And this is just what I see, right? Like, this is not what's under the surface of like some of the worst cases that I don't even see.
Yeah.
And so, you know, who is there to kind of help support these types of things? And I think, because I believe in the family unit so much, I feel like that does play a really crucial role, like in the education. Like I would hope, and I'm probably like overly optimistic in this, but the conversations that we have with our kids, they're pretty cut and dry. You know, like we have, and I would never want to put that responsibility on the school. You know, so, but I guess what's you know, and you're coming from seeing like probably some of the worst cases. And in seeing that, like sometimes you just don't have the option or the luxury of a parent who's able to share those things with their kids. Like I do, like I have the luxury of having time with my kids. I see them every single day and I'm able to have like hard, deep conversations with them. But I think that if more parents who do have time with their kids and they're in their right minds, if they're willing to like push past the embarrassment or like, I don't know what to say. Like I'm nervous to know what to say to my kids. Like, no, like rip the Band-Aid off, have the conversations, because if you don't, we always hear it, somebody else is going to have that conversation with them or not. And right. Like the conversation will never be had and the action will be done and it's too late.
Yeah. I mean, it's a problem that we're not going to solve here, but just something I want to get your thoughts of, because when you deal with a lot of the challenged youth, you see things from a different point of view. And I'm sure it is frustrating for you when you put a lot of effort into it and then some of them just continue doing the bad things, but then you're always motivated by the ones that make it. Like, well, it was a lot of work, but this kid made it. He's out on his own. He's out of the bad neighborhood. He's making something of himself, and it's all you can really hope for and ask for.
Right.
So this has been a great conversation, Collin. Obviously, you can see how long we've been sitting here talking. Time does fly. I learned a lot about the coffee business, how you run your business, and mainly for how you balance everything. You got a lot on your plate. I don't know how you do it, but I'm hoping that people who listen to this, who are trying to manage maybe half of what you're dealing with and they're overwhelmed, can see that it's not easy. It's not something that you go into thinking it's going to be all roses, but you have a bigger purpose. You have a mission, you have a great product, and you have great, exciting things happening. And then you and your wife and all the kids are working together to make sure it happens. So really great having you on, and I'm thankful for hearing all that. So now, where can people find you at? What's the address for Motivat Coffee?
Yeah, so come see us in person, 1528 Webster Street, Oakland.
Oakland.
Not Alameda. Because there is a 1528 Webster Street.
Someone's going to go to the wrong place.
It's a dispensary, so I mean, you can go there too.
Oh, look at that.
Right.
How about social media? Are you active anywhere?
Yeah. So at Motivat Coffee, no E. And then for me personally, at _pour-over_pastor.
Pour over pastor. Okay.
Making those coffee pour overs.
I will include that in the link.
Right on.
Thank you again for coming on to the show, and thank you for everybody watching and listening. If you liked the episode, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share with anybody that you feel is going to gain value from it. And if you would like to know how to support the channel by you watching this episode on YouTube, that's the best way to support the channel. It lets YouTube know that people are excited about it, and they will then push it out to everybody else. And Collin, again, we talked about earlier, but glad to have you on. Enjoy the challenge coin.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Everybody have a good one.